Welcome, 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 everyone. Want to thank you for taking time this evening and joining us here on our Ask the Doctor webinar. Tonight, Dr. Jeremy will be sharing with us the power of natural medicine with your heart health. So we are not here to treat, cure, prevent, do any of those crazy things. We're only here to share with you amazing information on how you can live a better life. So with nothing else to be said from me for the moment, Dr. Jeremy, you take it away, and we will we'll educate these people, give them some education.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me. Welcome, guys. Thanks for hopping on. I appreciate it. I value your time. We'll try to make good use of it. And I trust that you'll find value in what we share tonight. I think it's a very important topic. By far, the number one killer of us humans is heart disease. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about statistics. We're going to talk a little bit about underlying causes. We're going to talk about some myths that are unfortunately out there in the realms of cardiovascular disease that are unfortunately still taught, especially here in America. And we're going to talk about some natural solutions and some things that you can do to help and prevent the onset of cardiovascular disease. And a lot of this we're going to talk about is lifestyle, right? We oftentimes heart disease kind of gets put into the label of it's a genetic thing, right? That because my dad or my grandpa had heart disease or had high blood pressure or had a heart attack that I'm bound to have that as well. And we talked a little bit about this last week that genetics might load the gun, but it's lifestyle that pulls the trigger, right? And so we have so much we can do to prevent heart disease, prevent cardiovascular disease, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So if you guys think
you're going to put the responsibility in our court?
Exactly.
Oh, darn. That's no fun.
Oh, we just lost some people over there, right?
I know. Click, click, click.
Like, I'm out of here. And if you think of anything as we're going along, just drop it in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer any questions as they come along. If you have experienced any type of heart disease or cardiovascular symptoms, would love to know that too in the chat. You or maybe somebody you love have either experienced heart disease or high blood pressure or heart attack or stroke or peripheral vascular disease or any of these types of things. Would love to know what your experience or history is with that, either personally or with your family. Drop that in the chat. I'm going to try to share my screen here and see if this is successful. Is it so far? This is not the right one. Hold on a second. Might help if I have the right one pulled up here.
And Dr. Jeremy, if you will also in the upper right-hand corner of your screen where it says view, if you'll put it on speaker, that should keep everybody out of your way while you're doing your presentation.
Oh, that'll be helpful. Like that?
Yeah.
Let's see here. And yeah, I got that. Now trying to find where. All right, bear with me.
We're all learning this together.
All right, and there, I think I got it now. We'll see.
Okay.
All right, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Okay. And just like Anna said, is that we're not trying to give you medical advice. This is not meant to replace your doctor's recommendations. It's for information, right, and education purposes. So always have to throw that disclaimer in there. Heart disease is the #1 cause of death in the U.S., and it's not even a close. There is cardiovascular disease claims more lives than all forms of cancer combined.
Wow.
610,000 people annually of cardiovascular disease. Heart disease in general is approximately 1 million lives annually. One heart attack every 34 seconds in the US. And when we talk about heart disease as a broad topic, okay, we could be here for days talking about all the different types of heart disease. This talks about or shows some of the common heart diseases that we experience: coronary artery disease, heart failure, pericarditis, cardiomyopathy, arrhythmias, aneurysms, valvular diseases. We're going to focus tonight on cardiovascular disease. We're going to focus on the vascular part of that because it's the most common and by far the biggest killer. So these are types here. I'm going to move things around here on my screen. Coronary heart disease, right, involves blood vessels in the heart. We have cerebrovascular disease, blood vessels in the brain, and peripheral vascular or arterial diseases, of course, which is typically we would think of in the arms or the legs or hands or feet, right? These are what we hear are some of the most common risk factors: alcohol abuse, high blood pressure, diabetes, sedentary lifestyle, high cholesterol, which we're going to talk a little bit about the myth of cholesterol in some regards, and smoking. Obesity plays a role in heart disease, and this is why. With obesity, we tend to have these cardiometabolic risk factors, insulin resistance and increased blood pressure and inflammation, endothelial dysfunction, type 2 diabetes. And so those outcomes often lead to different types of heart disease. The cholesterol myth, you know, we've been taught, and raise your hand if this sounds familiar, that if you eat cholesterol or saturated fat, or if your cholesterol is too high, it's going to clog your arteries and you're going to have a heart attack, right? Have you guys heard that? A version of that? As more research has come out, we've found out that that's not really true. Cholesterol, we hear about all the evil things of cholesterol, almost like it's some evil substance that's out to get us, right? Like it's this villain, and it's going to attack you. It's going to give you a heart attack. It's going to give you a stroke. We need to get rid of it at all costs. But cholesterol is actually a vital nutrient. Our liver makes 80+% of cholesterol in our body. 20% or less actually comes from our diet. Our brain is 60% made of fat, and 25% of that approximately is made of cholesterol. And so there at the bottom, you can see that the cholesterol is used to make the cell membrane. The lining of every cell in your body is made of cholesterol. It's used to make important hormones and important nutrients like vitamin D. Actually, cholesterol in your skin, when it combines with ultraviolet rays, produces vitamin D. It's used to make all of our hormones. It's the backbone of all of the hormones in our body, bile acids, and even more. Low levels of cholesterol have been linked to Alzheimer's and stroke and depression and violent behavior, memory loss, and suicide. So this is how brains greet each other. Hey, fatty, right back at you, Lardo. Okay, so it's hard to find jokes, right, in cardiovascular disease, but I tried. So this is really the man that is behind the idea that cholesterol is the cause of heart disease, right? This idea started in the 1950s. One of the biggest proponents and originators of this idea was a doctor by the name of Ancel Keys, a scientist, that he came out with a landmark study. It was called the 7 Countries Study. And in the study, all of these countries that he reported on that had more saturated fat and had more cholesterol in their diets had dramatic higher rates of heart disease, okay? And so when he published this data, everybody was just flabbergasted by this connection, right? He had found the cause of all of this heart disease. And it was basically accepted as the gospel truth, and was published widely, and of course taught as the cause of heart disease was cholesterol. And of course, that led over time to all of the changes in our food pyramid, and that, you know, fat was bad, and we had to get, you know, which we still see, all the fat-free stuff on the shelves, right? Like that's somehow some kind of health food now because it's fat-free. But that's where all of this started, was with Ancel Keys. And the funny thing is that Ancel Keys actually studied 22 countries. when he was putting this study together. But guess why he only reported 7? Can you guess why? Well, it was because the other countries did not line up with his hypothesis that high cholesterol caused heart disease. So he left out countries that ate a lot of saturated fat, like France, for example, and had very little heart disease, right? And so he only published the 7 countries that that supported his hypothesis, left out all the other countries that didn't. And again, it was accepted as the gospel truth. So he was actually featured on the cover of Time magazine. This is actually funny. Here is 1961 when he was featured. Here's 1984. We're still talking about, right, the sad face with the eggs and the bacon. We can't eat eggs and bacon because it's got cholesterol. It's going to give us a heart attack, right? Now, 2014, we're starting to change things a little bit. Now it's just eat butter, okay? So, some things are changing in the right direction. People are learning that maybe some of these fake fats that we were told we should eat are maybe not so healthy for us. And especially here in the United States as a country, we've eaten less fat than probably we've ever eaten as a species, maybe. But did heart disease after all these dietary changes and all of these fake fats that we were told, and the vegetable oils and the margarine and all of these changes of the low-fat foods and things like that, did heart disease go down? No. And the answer is, of course, not exactly, Anna. It was exactly the opposite. It is escalated dramatically so over the last several decades. The high-carb diet I put you on 20 years ago gave you diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Oops. And that's, sadly, that's still what some doctors are teaching. If you have high cholesterol or high blood pressure, you need to eat a low-fat diet, which I will guarantee you will be unsuccessful as far as your metabolic goals are concerned. So this was a study about serum cholesterol and cognitive performance. And basically the study came up with that lower naturally occurring total cholesterol levels are associated with poor performance on cognitive measures, which place high demands on abstract reasoning, attention, concentration, word fluency, and executive functioning. So studies are actually showing that low cholesterol could have some health effects. This is a great book if you're a nerd like me and like to read about these types of things, called The Cholesterol Myths by Ulf Radenskov. It's an awesome book. It's actually online. If you want to jot that down or take a screenshot or take a picture of it for free, you can actually just read this book for free online. It's RAVNSKOV.NU./CM. So great book, lots of good, just really deep information in there, kind of exposing the myth of cholesterol and heart disease. There's actually a lot of side effects. We briefly touched on that of low cholesterol. And honestly, when I'm working with patients, I'm more concerned about a patient that shows up with low cholesterol than I am with one with high cholesterol. A lot of this is cognitive type things, right? And mood. And again, I think a lot of it's because our brain has a lot of fat up there, right? Higher chance of developing depression and suicidal thoughts, increased capacity for violence and aggression, increased risk of cancer and neurodegenerative diseases, low hormones, right? Low vitamin D. We found a bunch of these clogging your arteries. They're cholesterol pills. So I won't go into a lot of detail. I did last time we did this on, and I like that one, on statin drugs, which I'm not a fan. There's a lot of potential side effects with statin drugs. And the research just really isn't there showing that much benefit of statin drugs as far as prolonging life. It can definitely lower cholesterol, but again, we haven't even proven that cholesterol causes heart disease, right? In fact, we have a lot of evidence otherwise. But one thing that they've actually found out that I think is interesting about statin drugs is that they actually have anti-inflammatory activity, and so it makes you wonder. And we're going to talk a little bit about the inflammation connection. Are statins helping in some degree because they lower cholesterol? Doubtful. That's my opinion. Or could they be causing some benefit because they lower inflammation? And I really believe that that's probably the case. What we have to ask, we hear all about cholesterol, and indeed, if you were to take a diseased artery that's clogged up, that's plaqued up, if we were to dissect that artery, there is indeed cholesterol in there, right? But it's kind of like blaming the fireman for the fire, right? The fireman didn't cause the fire. They're there because there is one, right? And that's kind of like blaming cholesterol for arterial plaquing. There has to be some type of vascular injury before we can lay down plaque. There has to be vascular injury and inflammation before cholesterol can ever even get involved in this process. So what causes the vascular injury? So we look at things like smoking, high blood pressure. Probably one of the biggest overall causes of vascular injury in us Americans is high insulin and high blood sugar. High insulin and blood sugar actually make those LDL particles sticky, make our blood more sticky, and more increased possibilities of forming plaque in those arteries. High homocysteine, we're going to talk about that. Inflammation is a huge driver, and that can be just all wrapped up in the same sentence of blood sugar and insulin. And stress. How many people have we known that stress or stressful situations or loss of loved ones has caused somebody to have a heart attack, right? And a lot of that is driven by a stress response in the arteries. This is a picture of what a diseased artery might look like with plaque buildup here, right? And that, of course, can happen in the brain. It can happen in the heart, and we could have in the brain, of course, would be a stroke, and the heart would be a heart attack or a myocardial infarction. We can have it in the kidneys, are very prone to having clots and effects of arterial disease. And of course, can be in the extremities too. Of course, we think often about the feet or the lower extremities having circulation problems, right? Emerging evidence, atherosclerosis is an inflammatory process. And so this I'm going to show you briefly. I won't get into a lot of the boring science here, but this has to come first, guys. This injury has to come first. Okay, there's endothelial injury. This is the inside lining of the artery. Okay, so we do have LDL particles in our bloodstream, not the cause again, but when there's an injury, those LDL particles can migrate through the injury. We have these white blood cells called macrophages that engulf these LDL particles. They break down, they spill these contents in here. They call this a fatty streak when we're forming plaque in the arteries. And this whole process, again, is an inflammatory process that starts with the vascular injury. It's not caused by the LDL particles themselves. One of the things that I mentioned that can damage the artery lining is homocysteine. So homocysteine is a protein that we all have in our blood. What happens is if it gets too high, it can irritate the lining of the arteries. It can actually scrape the lining of the arteries, and that can, of course, initiate the plaquing process. Homocysteine is broken down primarily by two nutrients, B12 and folate. If we have enough of those in our bloodstream, in our body, we tend to be able to break down homocysteine quite easily, and it can't reach levels that's going to irritate the lining of those arteries. The thing is it's a very easy blood test to run, but nobody or hardly anybody runs it. Another thing that can happen is a genetic issue called MTHFR. I won't get into a lot of detail there, but it can have a genetic weak spot that hinders your body's ability to utilize folate and even B12 that can raise homocysteine levels. So homocysteine is important to check. If it's elevated, I'd also check a genetic test called an MTHFR. Both fairly inexpensive tests to run, but instead we're all tunnel visioned on our cholesterol, sadly. That's the typical blood test we get ran in our doctor's office. We can measure a thing in our a substance in our bloodstream called LPPLA2. And if this is elevated, we know without a doubt there's current plaquing going on. Okay, so another simple blood test to have ran. If there's high levels of this LPPLA2, we are likely dealing with a plaque that's very vulnerable to rupturing. And of course, if a plaque ruptures, we can have a thrombus and a blood clot. And of course, we know what that can cause, likely stroke or heart attack. And these are the important tests. I would encourage you guys to look at these if you've never, especially if you're over 40, like I am. I would encourage you guys to get these tests run. If your doctor won't run them, there's labs all over the place, right? That you can just go in and almost like, your McDonald's menu, choose what you want off the meal menu, right? And they'll run those labs for you. But these are very important. The high sensitivity C-reactive protein is a marker for vascular inflammation, blood vessel inflammation currently. The LPA is really only one of the cholesterol particles that I'm very interested in knowing about. It's a very inflammatory lipid particle, and there's a large genetic tendency towards this one. Now, it can be influenced with the lifestyle, but there is a big genetic driver of this LPA being elevated. LPPLA2 is another marker that we just saw on the other slide, which indicates current plaquing going on in your arteries. Another important one to increase risk actually causes vascular damage, stickiness in those LDL particles is insulin resistance and blood sugar problems. So getting a fasting insulin, your A1C, which is your average glucose, your fasting glucose is important to know, because 88%, guys, I'd say maybe even higher than that, but at least 88% of us have some degree of insulin resistance or insulin problems, or sometimes they use the term metabolic syndrome right now. So almost 9 out of 10 of us on this Zoom likely have metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance, and that is setting the stage for possible cardiovascular disease. Now, a lot of times, if you have blood sugar problems, we may not know it until you're diabetic. It's a lot more difficult to reverse diabetes than it is to reverse insulin resistance. So I encourage you to get blood levels checked. Homocysteine, we just talked about. Red blood cell magnesium, I think, is an important test. And vitamin D. I think all of these are much more valuable tests than your standard cholesterol profile.
Dr. Jeremy, have them
Yeah.
they need to take, if they're thinking about doing this, take a screenshot of that. I took my camera and just took a quick picture of that. That's a great way. So when you go to the doctor, you know what to ask for.
Yeah, ask them to do these. These are not really wild or out there tests. They're not often ran, and your insurance may not pay for them because they're not the standard lipid profile, right? But I guarantee you that these will be worth the extra money to know these risk markers and to take action if anything in this list is abnormal. Okay. And if you have questions, you can always reach out at any time. We're happy to get you more information on any of this. These are some just physical signs that we can look on ourselves. An earlobe crease is frequently associated with vascular disease. And the reason is because we have capillaries, right, in the tiny little arteries in our earlobe. If we start to get some vascular disease, we start to get some plaquing, those capillaries kind of start to break down or kind of sink in, and that creates an earlobe crease. Basically, the earlobes aren't as plump as they once were, right? This is the only place you don't want to lose weight is in your earlobe, okay? But this crease can signify, it's not 100%, but a high correlation of a strong crease in the earlobe and cardiovascular disease. This Shamroth sign, everybody do this. Finger right there. You should see this little hole right there. Everybody do that. If you don't have a little hole right there, you might have clubbing of your fingernails, which is a peripheral vascular disease issue. We're not getting good circulation to your fingers. I don't think we could do that to our toes. I'm not flexible enough, surely, to do that. You can also do a capillary reflex with your fingertips, and that's you take your finger and squeeze at your fingernail and the tip of your finger and look how long that takes to pink back up again. And the longer that takes could indicate that we're not getting good circulation to your fingers. And of course, you could do that to your toes as well. So those are some physical signs that you can do. Lifestyle factors that we need to think about to reduce cardiovascular disease. Of course, you guys won't like me for saying this, but exercise is important. And we don't, and me included, do not incorporate this enough. Reduce sugar, simple carbs, grains, starches, because they drive that blood sugar mechanism, right? The insulin resistance. Avoid these fake fats, avoid these vegetable oils and trans fats and processed foods. And they can't believe it's not butter. It should be called, I can't believe you eat this crap, right? The stop smoking annual physical with the lab work that we talked about, more than just your lipid profile, please. Reduce your stress, self-care. We're too busy adulting that we don't often take care of ourselves and have avenues for stress relief and enjoyment because we're too busy adulting. So take care of yourself. Grounding is another way to reduce stress. Get your bare feet on some grass, right? Get out in nature and take care of your stress levels. Hydration at the very least, 64 ounces of water per day. And I would argue probably closer to half your body weight in ounces a day. And this is an area I struggle with because I'm not thirsty very often. And so I have to force myself by staying on task, knowing how much water I need to drink at certain times of the day, or I will not come anywhere near 64 ounces if left to my own.
If I have to drink half my weight, I'm going to become a lake.
Sleep at least 7-8 hours a night. Sleep is so important for stress and reducing cardiovascular risk. Get in your green fruits and veggies, rich in phytonutrients like lutein, your essential vitamins, your folate. Get in your blue and your purple fruits and veggies are very important for heart disease. So your blueberries, your blackberries, your grapes, your prunes, your raisins, your plums, your eggplant. Some natural support options. We're talking about some of the most important nutrients that you can use to help with cardiovascular disease or even just reduce risk of cardiovascular disease. CoQ10 is probably one of the most important antioxidants and nutrients in our body. It's synthesized in the cells. Deficiencies include congestive heart failure, high blood pressure, angina, mitral valve prolapse, stroke, cardiac arrhythmias, cardiomyopathy, lack of energy, gingivitis, and generalized weakening of the immune system. It plays a critical role in the production of energy in our mitochondria, right? The powerhouse, the energy producer in our cells. Vitamin C is super important to reduce cardiovascular disease risk. So water-soluble nutrients easily absorbed from the small intestine. We are the only animal that we know of that cannot make its own vitamin C, right? We have to depend on it in our diet. It's essential for the formation of synthesis of collagen, serotonin, norepinephrine, thyroxine, thyroid hormone, activation of folic acid, and some of our corticosteroids, like, for example, cortisol. Of course, found in fresh fruits, especially citrus fruits, strawberries, cantaloupe, Brussels sprouts, collard greens, lettuce, cabbage, peas, and asparagus. Cardiovascular functions, it increases HDL, it decreases LDL, it strengthens the elasticity of our blood vessels, it decreases free radical oxidation of cholesterol. So whenever that cholesterol gets into that site of injury in the vascular endothelium, the cholesterol is oxidated, is broken down, and creates a lot of inflammation, and this protects against that. It decreases levels of that LPA that I talked about in the tests, blood tests we need to check, decreases levels of that, which is known to form atherosclerotic plaques, and it actually helps dissolve atherosclerotic plaques if you already have some. Magnesium is important. Over 300 enzymatic reactions are dependent on magnesium in the body. It's important for the transmission of nerve impulses and muscular activity and contraction, temperature regulation in the body, detoxification in the body, the formation of healthy teeth and bones. It's a superstar when it comes to cardiovascular disease and deficiencies associated with increased incident of atherosclerosis, which is basically when we get plaquing in our arteries can harden and lose their pliable consistency, they're rubbery consistency, and they become more like a pipe, right, than a rubber hose. Magnesium increases oxygenation of the heart muscle. Of course, we lose magnesium in food processing, all of the processed foods that we eat. We lose a lot of magnesium in today's soil, right? Our soil is often depleted of magnesium that's growing our fruits and veggies in. Therapeutic doses of magnesium range from 500 to 1500 milligrams a day. You know, if you're getting a little bit too much magnesium, not because it's toxic, but you'll end up in the bathroom, right? Vitamin D, we have very few good food sources of vitamin D. We need to get most of this from the sunlight. Food sources are fatty fish, cod liver oil, for example. Humans not exposed to sufficient sunlight, either due to geography, right? Our northerners, Rick up there, sometimes will probably deal with vitamin D deficiency, shelter or clothing. I work with a lot of Amish and Mennonite populations, right? And this time of year, they're not out running around in their shorts and tank tops, and they're suffering from vitamin D deficiency, right? Because their skin is not exposed to the sunlight. High levels of vitamin D have been shown to protect against diabetes and osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, depression, several autoimmune diseases, several cancers, including breast, prostate, and colon. Addition of K2 is suggested. K2 kind of helps with vitamin D in keeping calcium in our bones and out of our arteries where we don't want that calcium to be, right? So these are blood levels, suggested blood levels of vitamin D. I like to see around 50 or a little over 50 is a good place to shoot for. We might go higher if we're treating more advanced cardiovascular disease or possibly in those that are dealing with cancer. Other nutrient support options include L-arginine, B12, and folate, especially, again, if you have elevated homocysteine in your blood. Hawthorn, nattokinase, omega-3s, and curcumin. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the research on curcumin. Do we have any questions yet in the chat?
I haven't really seen any. Nope. No.
All right. Curcumin is a powerhouse for cardiovascular disease. Is one of my favorite tools in my toolbox to help my patients that are dealing with these types of conditions. And some of the reasons is it lowers oxidative stress markers in the blood. It turns off certain genes which cause scarring and enlargement of the heart. It lowers high blood pressure. It increases circulation, prevents blood clotting, which can prevent heart attacks. It controls inflammation that can lead to heart disease. It controls the inflammation that we saw in that picture earlier that can cause that vascular injury, right? It prevents hardening of the arteries by inhibiting oxidation of that LDL cholesterol. I did a quick search of just curcumin and cardiovascular on PubMed, and there were over 1,100 results on studies and papers talking about the benefits of curcumin in cardiovascular disease. This one here is the modulatory effects of curcumin on the atherogenic, which is the production of the arteriosclerotic, plaquing activities of inflammatory monocytes. So they showed that curcumin can exert anti-atherosclerotic effects through inhibiting the atherogenic properties of the monocytes, right? Those are those white blood cells that gobble up the LDL particles and start to create that fatty streak and that plaquing, including inflammatory cytokine production, adhesion, migration of those smooth muscle cells, as well as intracellular cholesterol accumulation. So lots of different ways that curcumin is working in the plaque reduction process. Curcumin in metabolic health and disease. Curcumin is a polyphenol found in turmeric that has been reported to have antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, hepatoprotective, anti-atherosclerotic, and anti-diabetic properties, among others. Curcumin supplementation improves vascular endothelial function. That's the inside layer of those arteries, right? In healthy middle-aged and older adults by increasing nitric oxide bioavailability and reducing oxidative stress. Curcumin, the golden spice in treating cardiovascular diseases. In the abstract here, it talks about the cardiovascular protective properties of curcumin in cardiovascular diseases have been fully illustrated in numerous studies. Okay, so this isn't new information. We've known that curcumin has a lot of benefits for cardiovascular disease on a number of areas for a very long time. Okay, but this is always where we hear the big but, right? When we hear all of the good things about something and then they say but, we always know that that's going to have a problem, right? That there's going to be some reason that all of those good things aren't quite as good as what we thought. There's got to be a catch. And in curcumin, the catch is that curcumin is not very bioavailable, okay? In a lot of the early studies on curcumin were studies done in the lab or in cell cultures or in petri dishes, right? And what they were seeing was just amazing in curcumin's ability to do all of these wonderful things with inflammation and anti-cancer, blood properties in atherosclerotic type lesions in arteries. But when they tried to reproduce those same benefits in human studies, they often fell short. And the reason is that the percentage of curcumin that if you ingest by mouth that actually gets absorbed is sadly only 10%.
Wow.
This is an article that talks about curcumin's bioavailability. And it says curcumin has been confirmed to exhibit very poor bioavailability, with many studies showing very low or even undetectable concentrations in the blood or extraintestinal tissues. Major reasons are due to its poor absorption, rapid metabolism. So it doesn't absorb very well. What is absorbed is rapidly broken down, or it's considered chemically unstable, and it's rapidly eliminated from the body. Okay, so this has been frustrating to scientists for a long time because they knew all of these awesome benefits, but they couldn't get it into the human body. They couldn't get it at sufficient levels in the bloodstream, and they sure weren't getting it at therapeutic levels in the cells, right? So this has been the struggle until now, okay? And that's because we have the availability of a new technology that changes the whole landscape of what curcumin can do in the human body. And that's because they're able to use this technology to increase the bioavailability of curcumin up to 277 times more than traditional curcumin or turmeric. And the reason is curcumin and turmeric, where it comes from, right? The root turmeric is where curcumin, the what I would call the therapeutic component of turmeric, comes from. And it's a lipid-like substance. It's a fatty, oily-like substance. And we're trying to get this through the digestive process into the bloodstream, which is mostly water. So that you can imagine that that's a problem in and of itself, as oil and water don't mix, right? And then trying to get that also into the cell at levels that could be therapeutic for our health. This is what this technology looks like in a little dropper bottle. This liquid is a powerhouse for cardiovascular disease. And these are the patents right here, multi-patented technology that actually came out of Germany is where this technology originated. And what they do is they break down this curcumin into less than 30 nanometer particle sizes. We're going to talk about exactly how small that is. Teeny tiny particle sizes. And then this is still a lipid substance, right? So then they wrap it in a micelle, and a micelle actually is able to carry this component easily in the bloodstream and easily to all of the cells in our body. And that is what makes this special and has the ability to increase bioavailability up to 277 times more. We're going to talk a little bit about why that is. These are the three types of technology that are included in this. First, we take the turmeric root, right, and we just extract the curcumin component, right? Then we apply that nanotechnology to it to shrink those particle sizes less than 30 nanometers. Then they wrap that in a micelle, carry it easily in the bloodstream, easily to our cells, and of course the end product is something like that. So just how small is a nanometer? Well, a red blood cell is 7,000 nanometers wide. A human hair is about 100,000 nanometers thick. A pinhead is 1,000,000 nanometers wide. And now we're talking about 30 nanometers in size, in particle size. That's what is so special about this technology, and why we're now seeing things that we thought curcumin could do a long time ago, but weren't able to make that happen inside the human body because of those bioavailability issues. So this is an example of what happens when we have a single oral dose of just regular curcumin. Okay, this is a 2,000 milligram. It's a pretty hefty dose of curcumin. And you can see that, ta-da, it's not very exciting. Right here at an hour, we have the peak of curcumin in the bloodstream. All right, we just have a very tiny amount in an hour and a half, 2 hours, it's gone. It's undetectable in the body. Okay, so you can see exactly when we talk about poor bioavailability, what that means. It's not getting in the body. It's not getting in the bloodstream at levels that could be therapeutic. Now, when we change this technology and we apply the BioMS technology to the curcumin, it's a whole different story, okay? We're seeing levels like this, and this one studies between men and women. The native curcumin levels are down here. We can't even really see them come off of the baseline, but it's down here somewhere. This is the BioMS technology. We're reaching levels up here. Now that's exciting, but I wanted to show you what's more exciting than just how high we're achieving blood levels is how long. Look at this. We have 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours, 20 hours, 24 hours, right? We were lucky to get 2 hours out of curcumin at hardly a measurable amount. We're talking 24 hours plus at therapeutic levels, and this is just from a single serving. This has never been seen before, especially in the realm of turmeric or curcumin. It's just not been possible. And so that is about all I had, Anna. I want to see if there's any questions, and then I want to turn it over to you.
I did see where Lisa said, make sure you get an MTHFR testing to see if you can process vaccines well. And there is a lot of truth to that. So if there's, I'm sure you would agree with that as well.
Yes, MTHFR is that genetic test. A lot of times people will, with that, not everybody, but oftentimes that will cause a high homocysteine. And so if I see that in the bloodstream, I'm encouraging our patients to check that genetic marker, that MTHFR marker, that methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase marker. Say that 5 times fast. It's pretty good for a Missouri boy, right?
That was good.
If that marker is, if you have positive for some of those genetic weak spots, it can hinder your body's ability to detox. And one of those problems or side effects of that is high homocysteine, which, like we've seen in the image, can scrape and irritate the lining of the arteries. I had a professor that said high homocysteine was like having ground glass shooting through your arteries. And that always left an unfavorable picture in my mind.
Oh, that hurts just to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that high homocysteine scrapes, irritates that lining of the arteries, and then we can see that picture where we saw the injury, then the LDL particle comes through that injury, and then we start to set up that inflammation and that plaquing process. Again, the cholesterol wasn't the villain that caused it, right?
Right. And then Susie asked, since CoQ10 is fat soluble, if we don't get enough in our diet, how can we increase our intake of that?
Yeah, and there is CoQ10, like curcumin, is has been a struggle because being fat soluble, it's not near as difficult as curcumin to absorb. We do get better levels in the bloodstream than we could with curcumin, but it is a struggle. There is some newer technologies out there where they're using emulsions and they're using liposomal type formulas where they're kind of creating a micelle situation. Without giving away too much information, that is one ingredient that we're looking at using the BioMS technology with to help get into the bloodstream at much higher levels. So,
oh, that would be amazing. That would be amazing, because it's something we do need. So.
Exactly. I see all of that on your shelf back there, Ann. I'm going to come and rob your
You can come rob my stash. Yeah. I've got to get some of that mailed out. I've got several people that so far, usually the first month, I just, I share it with them and then say, let's go from there. Um, so now we've got some people who want to share with us, or I've asked to share with us their personal testimonies of what has this product done with them in their heart health journey. So the first one I'm going to bring on, if it's all right, is Doug Ware. Doug, would you unmute yourself and
Hey there.
come on down? You're on The Price is Right.
Yeah, Dr. J was telling my story there in that presentation. It's just like everything, the whole pattern. It's the way it all happened back in January of 2021. My check engine light came on for the first time, and I was telling you this morning, Anna, about I'd had this really bad anxiety for like a week, and finally Mindy, she begged me to call the doctor, and I called him, and they said, I need you to come here right now. And when I got there, I was actively having a heart attack, and it was, the one in your LAD, which is the Widowmaker. And, I think back to that, I was this close to being dead. And I'm sure glad I went to the doctor that day. They saved my life. But a couple of weeks later, I felt like I was at the end of my health span because they put me on like 7 different medications. I felt like a tired old man. And I thought, man, I'm only 51 years old. I still have to work and I have a family. And this isn't the way I wanted to go out. So I kind of went rogue and started reading all these books, turned into a vegan. I stopped taking all the prescription meds and I felt better. But then in July, after I turned 52, I had another heart attack. So this time it kind of scared me. And I thought, well, maybe they were right. Maybe I should have listened to them and put me back on all the medications again. I was taking them. I felt terrible, and neuropathy in my feet from the cholesterol medicines, and just felt bad again. And then here come this bottle of this liquid turmeric, in the mail. And I took the first dose, and I thought it was placebo because that neuropathy in my feet went away that same day on the first day I took it. And I'm like,
crazy.
How can this be possible? So, make a long story short, I've been taking it every single day. I haven't missed a dose, multiple times a day for the last 9 months. And I feel great. I had an echo done on my heart back in January. There's no active damage. My EF factor was normal. I don't have any scarring or any proof that there was even a heart attack that happened inside my heart. And things just keep getting better and better. And my reactive C protein was one of the things doctor talked about there, but it was the higher end one. And I had to beg my family doctor to take that test. So if you see those tests, it's not always easy for them to do those tests for you. So you might have to look to a different doctor. And we learned a lot of things. He was talking about the high insulin and that's present in my body. And it's just fascinating to me that these doctors didn't pick that up. Even we looked at back at some of the testing when I was in the hospital, and those levels were up then, and they didn't say anything to me about it. They just sent me out the door. And thankfully, we got to the bottom of some of this stuff, and I feel great. And I'll shut up and let the next person talk.
I know. I think that's wonderful. And, it is so true in today's society. It is managed healthcare. It is really not healthcare anymore. It's managed healthcare. That's what they put on the sign of all of their buildings now, managed healthcare. And if you choose not to advocate for yourself, you will not get good healthcare. So I'm so thankful that you did. And Mandy advocated for you and said, go get it done, Doug, because, I would never ever got to meet you and you make me laugh a lot.
Sure.
Yeah. So glad you're still here. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Dr. Thornton?
No, I think that Doug is a perfect example of the power of looking deeper into health beyond just a lipid profile, and what making changes in lifestyle can do, especially adding this amazing technology.
Yes. And we have Miss Carrie on. She's going to share a little bit about her heart health journey.
Hi, guys. So,
Hey.
it's funny that you're talking about advocating for your health because, sorry, people are texting me. It's funny that you mentioned that because whenever I was having pain and neuropathy and all these issues, I knew something was going on. And my doctor was just like, oh, you're probably just anemic. Like take some iron. That's what we look at first. But I knew something was going on.
Mhm.
And so after pushing for certain tests, I messaged Dr. Thornton. I was like, I need to know, like, what should I be asking for? And I went to my primary doctor and I said, I want these tests ran. These are the tests that I want run. And finally, after having several elevated ESRs and CRPs and explaining to him, like, this is something that's been going on for years, but I also have family history of this stuff. It wasn't until then he was like, I'm going to just send you to a rheumatologist. Like, I had been asking for that for months. So you really do have to advocate for yourself. So I was on a Zoom with Anna this morning, and this side, like, we all know, like, I have rheumatoid arthritis, and the Nanify has really, really helped in that aspect. Like, I don't have neuropathy anymore, and I can make a fist and I can walk without pain. So I've been very vocal about that aspect with my journey with Nanify, but there's this whole other side that I've never even shared before until I was on a Zoom with Anna this morning, and she was like, can you share that later? And it's one of the things that, like, I just didn't think about it. I will make a disclaimer: before you stop taking any medications, please consult your primary physician. Don't be a Carrie, like, do it the right way. But 2 years ago, I got off work one night, and my mom's a nurse, and she had her stethoscope out and her blood pressure cuff. And I always check it, like, every once in a while, just to check. And I said, Mom, why don't you check my blood pressure really quickly? And so she checked it, and she pumped it back up. She checked it again, and she said, there is no flipping way your blood pressure is this high. And I said, well, how high is it? Because I had checked it at home. I thought that I was getting a false reading. And my mom said, I'm getting 165 over 105. There's no way. Like, I was 35 years old. And so my husband at the time was at the fire academy 2 hours away, but he had been working with the fire department. So my mom said, tomorrow, go to the fire department, have them check your blood pressure, which they will do for you, by the way. So just throwing that out there. If you ever think that your blood pressure is high, you can go to the fire department. They will check it. And so they pulled out the machine and they hooked me up, and my blood pressure was 207 over 113
Oh my gosh.
at 35 years old. And I do have a family history of cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, stroke runs rampant in my family. And she said, you need to go to the hospital. And it was my daughter's birthday. And I said, I'll go to the hospital after we do birthday dinner. Like, my daughter's my first priority. And needless to say, she was like, I don't feel comfortable with you driving. Like, they even pulled me into the chief's office and did an echo on me right there in the fire department because they thought I was having a stroke or something. I don't know. So I had to follow up with a primary care physician before they would ever clear me to have my hysterectomy. I had to have cardiac clearance. And after further testing, like, the doctor did ultrasounds of my kidneys and we tested everything, and everything seemed to be fine. So they put me on a low dose of lisinopril, 5 milligrams. I think that's the lowest dose you can take. And I have been taking that for 2 years. Every once in a while, I'm not the best patient. I don't take my blood pressure medication every single day. I know I should. However, I'm just not very responsible, I guess you could say. I was trying to do my best, but a couple months ago, I stopped taking it completely. And I do monitor my blood pressure at home. And, I've only been taking the liquid drops. I've been taking the Nanify. And so I went into Walmart a couple days ago, which is why I'm sharing this right now. Walked into Walmart and I had my kids with me. Kids stress you out when you're shopping. Like, you got 3 kids, they all want something different. They're stressing me out. I'm like, I'm going to check my blood pressure right here in this store. So I sat down in the machine, put my arm in, waited the 2 minutes, and my blood pressure was 116/81.
Yes.
So that right there, like I am not here to say that it cures anything, and I am not here to say that you should stop taking your medications. But what I am here to say is that this is something that everybody needs, especially if they have high blood pressure or pain or inflammation. This is something that everybody should be taking, even if it's a preventative method. And you should let your doctor know that you're taking it. Talk to your doctor about it. My doctor gave me the okay to use it, and I cannot wait to go back to the doctor and tell him, oh, by the way, this medication that you're like, well, that's cool. The Indians used it for years, blah, 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 is actually working, and I don't have to take my medication. So
That's wonderful.
but don't just stop taking your medication though. Make sure you talk to your doctor.
Yes, we are not doctors, neither do we play one on daytime television. So we should, they went to school, they got the degrees. Worst case scenario, I know Dr. Jeremy doesn't want to be flooded with everybody calling him, but I guess if we have to, we could reach out to him and say, what do you think, doctor? And he's like, I'm out of here. He's not gonna come back on and talk. Are you, Dr. Jeremy? I think he's gone. I
was about to say he's probably speechless. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this girl. Oh my gosh.
Why don't you just offer my services? No, I didn't mean it like that, but you do need to make sure that you talk to a doctor first. That's
for sure.
That's really huge. And I will tell you, I've had a lot of stresses in my life the last 1.5 2 years. And before I started taking the curcumin, because of Charlie and his heart issues, we had the blood pressure cuff here at the house. And I was checking my blood pressure back in October and beginning of November. And I was really thinking, okay, it's time for me to go to the doctor. I don't like doctors. I don't go to doctors. I'm really not sure that there's a lot of them that don't have your best interest at heart. I'm sorry. And that's just the way, that's my feeling. That doesn't have to be your feeling, but that's the way I feel about it. And so my blood pressure was getting up to around 185/105 on a pretty consistent basis. And I would take it when nobody was around because I didn't want to be honest with them what my blood pressure was. And a couple hours before we got on this call, I checked my blood pressure again, and it was 118/82. And that's pretty much where I'm at now on a pretty consistent basis. And the only thing I have changed, as you can tell, I haven't changed my diet. The only thing I've changed is that little bottle of the blessing drops. That's the only difference I have changed. So for me, I think it does make an impact in our health. This is what they used years ago. This is an ancient remedy, that collided with modern technology, and it's amazing what this can do for you. So just be so thankful that somebody that cared enough about you to invite you here tonight to share this amazing information. And get back with them. Get your little bottle of drops. I mean, it's like right here. It's so worth every drop, every dime it costs. It's worth it, and you'll feel so much better. Dr. Jeremy, do you have anything else to share?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me on, Anna. Thanks, guys, for tuning in and joining us tonight. I would encourage you, if you haven't tried this technology, it's definitely worth looking into. The other thing is we have some pretty amazing info and testimonial groups.
Yes.
If you want to just check out some more information, you want to see some testimonials about more than just cardiovascular disease, reach out and we'll get you invited into one of those groups, and you can learn more info on that.
Yes. Thank you for remembering that. Anyway, thank you all once again for sharing your evening with us. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening. Be blessed. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Get ready for the big weekend, and we will talk again soon. Next week we are going to be talking about the ugly truth is that correct? The ugly truth about turmeric. Oh, this ought to be good.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
being here.
Bye,
Good
guys.
night, everybody.
Goodbye.